In this video, I'm going to break down a full 3-phase walk-around mentalism routine. This is going to be the perfect, surefire, multi-phase mentalism routine for you to go out there and absolutely kill at gigs or for your friends and family. This is a fantastic routine that you can perform back to back to back and is sure to leave a lasting impression on your audience. What is good, guys? It is Reed and welcome back to a very special video. Today we have episode 2 of my brand new Repertoire series. Now, if you did not see episode 1 of Repertoire, I highly recommend you go check it out. I will link it right up there. Now, what is the new Repertoire series? This is a series all about creating 3-phase routines and teaching you guys how to create routines and also giving you tips on how to create your own routines. On YouTube, there is just so many trick after trick after trick tutorial. In these videos, I'm going to be carefully selecting various tricks to combine together and then talk about how to structure them and how to tie them together, transition points, plot points, and how to get the most out of these routines. I'm going to be making all kinds of different routines for all kinds of different settings. In episode 1, we broke down a card routine that was the bang for your buck routine. Simple effects that are absolutely killer that you can perform anytime, anywhere. And in today's video, we're going to switch gears and dive into mentalism. But not just any mentalism, this is walk-around mentalism. One of the things that I get asked the most, what are your favorite walk-around mentalism routines? What do you do for strolling mentalism gigs? Well, today I'm going to teach you one of my favorite 3-phase mentalism routines. If you're a mentalist and you want to do a great opener, if you're a card worker and you want to introduce some mentalism to your work, this is the routine for you. Now, if you guys want to learn some even more incredible mentalism, I have just recently put out my propless mentalism masterclass over on the wizard tier of my membership. I teach something like 6 effects, dozens of principles, and my full system for creating your own propless mentalism. If you'd like to see a performance of one of the incredible effects you'll learn on the masterclass, I will link it up here. So if you'd like to check that out along with the other masterclasses and lectures that are available and my full mentalism course, links are down in the description. And if you'd like to get one-on-one help from me, anything magic or mentalism related, you can check out my private lessons at the link in the description. Now, with all that said, let's not waste too much more time and let's jump right into the video. So let's start with the routine overview. So this particular routine is focused on walk-around mentalism. So what are some of the very important things that a routine like this needs to hit? Well, first of all, it has to be surefire. If this is a walk-around mentalism routine, it is something that you can do to table after table and establish yourself as a credible performer without having to worry about things going wrong. It is something also that is very much in your control. So if something doesn't quite go according to plan, you can save it. But the instructions are extremely simple to follow and everything is really in your control so that you can be sure that nothing goes wrong when you're performing this effect. The second thing is it has to pack small. It has to pack very small. So as you'll see in a minute, the only props that you need for this effect is a Sharpie and some billets. It needs to pack small. It has to be something you can keep in one pocket or even half of a pocket. Just have your Sharpie and your billet. You can just pull out anytime, anywhere, and quickly go into this routine. Then it has to be something that is repeatable. You can do this back to back to back at all the different tables that you might be doing walk around to, which means it has to have some variety so that if the participants are speaking to each other after the event, that there isn't a bunch of overlap in the things that were happening. And then it has to be something super easy so that you as a performer can be very comfortable, be very relaxed each time you approach a new table and have to kind of break the ice again. Speaking of breaking the ice, it has to be something strong to establish your credibility quickly off the bat so that you can just walk up to a group, open with this routine and do it. I also wanted to make something that could stand alone. If you're just a mentalist and you're doing a mentalism only gig and you have a bunch of tables to get around to, you can literally do this routine to every single table. It's gonna be slightly different every time. Everything people think of is gonna be different, so it's gonna have a different result. It's gonna be hard hitting, easy, great opener, so you could literally go table to table to table doing this one routine for the whole night. That's some of the reasons why I think this is such a great walk around mentalism routine, and that's why I chose this to start the first mentalism episode of Repertoire, just because it's so hard hitting. The mentalism variations of Repertoire might be slightly different than the playing card versions. With playing cards, it's very easy to pick 3 effects and just say, learn this, learn this, learn this, string them together, here's how you can tie them together, here's some extra ideas, here's why I structured them this way, and you're off to the races. In my opinion, mentalism has to be a little bit more thoughtfully choreographed, and also the effects that you structure should link together a little bit more more than with playing cards, and even better if you have an overall story, which this effect I do. Now you could take this in several different ways. I'm going to give you one particular premise you can do with this that I really like, but of course there's lots of different ways you can take it. The other side of that is with mentalism, a lot of the effects are more so just a singular method or sort of a technique that you're using to achieve something, right? It might be like a billet peak and then a billet switch and then a one ahead, and that's your routine. It's not necessarily like, here's this routine I taught on the channel, here's this routine, and here's this routine. It might be, go watch this episode of my Mentalism 101 series where I teach this switch and then this, right? And then in this video, I'm going to teach you more about the actual routine of it. That's just the nature of mentalism and how these are going to go a little bit differently. So let's jump right in. So as I mentioned, props for this routine: billets and a Sharpie. And I will make it clear, you do want a stack of billets, and you will be going through, I believe it's 4 billets, it may even be 5 billets each time you perform this, okay? So you will need to make sure you have a good set of billets, a good stack of billets to perform this effect. So first, let's start with a quick overview of the particular routines and the sleights or moves that you'll need to use to achieve them. So the first thing we're going to be doing is essentially the verbal equivoque playing card force. If you're unfamiliar with that, I will link the tutorial for that right up here. It is a fantastic way where you can seemingly create a playing card all together, but it is fully in your control. For that, you don't need anything but to memorize a script. Next, we will be doing a peak reveal. So we will be peaking a billet and performing a reveal, and we're going to be doing that using the double lift switch. So I will link my Mentalism 101 switches video where I teach that particular switch. Again, in these videos, when it comes to sleights and tutorials, I'm going to briefly teach everything, but I will always link you to more in-depth tutorials on the particular moves or routines because I want to keep this as fast as possible through the tutorial section. Finally, we're going to end with a one ahead routine. Now I will spend a little bit more time on the one ahead in this video because I actually haven't made the one ahead episode of Mentalism 101 yet. It is on the list. It is coming soon, as is my one ahead masterclass to the wizard tier of my membership. But for now, I'm just going to talk about the structure of the one ahead that you're going to use in this routine. Now, the one sleight you need for the one ahead is another billet switch, but we're going to do what I call the open switch. So really, it's not a move. I'm going to teach it in this video because I haven't talked about it anywhere else on the channel. So that is the routine. All very practical stuff. And when you see the way it's sequenced, I know you're going to love it. So I'm gonna give you guys now a studio performance of what this routine looks like. With the playing card version, I gave you individual performances of the particular effects. I think with this particular routine, a full performance makes sense. I don't have a full performance of me doing this on video, so I'll just do a studio performance for you guys. Sit back, imagine you're the spectators, and I'll just give you a sense about how this routine would look. Quick pause in your regularly scheduled program. I just wanna let you guys know that I offer one-on-one virtual private magic lessons, perfect for beginner to advanced magicians and mentalists looking to improve their technique, sleight of hand, learn any of my best effects, learn the fundamentals of card magic, mentalism, or absolutely anything. This is the best value in magic in terms of getting you to become a better magician. I can sit with you one-on-one, tell you exactly what you personally need to work on, and teach you a bunch of the incredible material that I perform in my professional repertoire. If you decide to take a lesson with me, you will get 24/7 personal contact, you'll get custom curriculums, personally tailored effects. Every lesson you will get a downloadable recording, giving you something you can keep with you forever and always return to learn at your own pace. Over on my website, I have a bunch of reviews and testimonials, both video and written form, that you guys can check out. And if you'd like some more info or to book a lesson, all you have to do is head over to the link in the description, or feel free to send me an email at rf.sleights@gmail.com. Now, back to the video. All right, so imagine I have multiple spectators here. So together, we're gonna create a fictional character. Maybe what they look like, how they act, their name, all these characteristics. You guys are going to make every decision, and together we're going to try to build this character that only exists in your mind. Spectator number one, I'm going to hand you this, and I want you to write down a personality trait that you imagine this person has. It could be physical, it could be character trait, just one word that describes this imaginary character. All right, so they write that down. Let's say they go with this. Now they write that down, I don't look, I'm gonna have them set that on top of the deck so I can show the other spectators. You guys can see, I won't look. And then I'm gonna take that billet, I'm gonna fold it up, and I'm gonna hand that to them to initial. So they can now take this billet, again, I'm not gonna look, and let's say they initial that, so they initial that billet and they set it in their pocket. That trait is now in their pocket and set away. Now, spectator number two, I want you to think of a name for for this character, okay? Imagine any name, let that name come to your mind, and get that name in your head. Okay, I'm gonna hand you this billet and this pen. I want you to write that name down. They'll go ahead, they will write it down. They write down this. I would not know, of course, what that is. This will be in their hands the entire time. I will now instruct them to fold it, and then I will instruct them to initial it, okay? And then they will put that in their pocket. I never touch that billet. Now that we've done that, you're just thinking of its name, you're thinking of its personality trait. Start to imagine what you think this character might look like. Now, I am gonna choose the hobby of this character. And for me, I'm a magician. I like playing cards. So I'm gonna say this character likes playing cards. Maybe it likes playing card games. Let's say that. It likes playing card games and it has a favorite card. Okay, and I'm gonna actually write down on this billet what their favorite card is. So let's go, actually, no, I'm gonna cross that out. I'm gonna go with this instead. Let's go with this. Okay, I'm gonna write that down. This is their favorite card. So now you're imagining a name, you're imagining a trait, and I'm imagining this character's favorite playing card. Now, spectator number 2, can you hold out your hand for me? I'm gonna set this in your hand, okay? So this is now in the spectator's hand. I want you guys to see if you can intuit what that card is, because it's very important. If I'm gonna try to get inside your head and try to do a bit of mind reading here, we have to all be on the same page. Let's do this. I'm gonna ask you a series of questions. You guys will make every single decision. And this way it's as random as possible, and you guys truly make every decision you want to get to this playing card. So I'm gonna perform this part on ChatGPT just to make it a little bit more authentic. So I want you to imagine I have an invisible deck of playing cards. There's red cards and black cards. I dump out one color. Which color do I dump out?
Let's go with black cards.
Perfect. So I dump out the black cards and I spread them in front of you. Now in your mind, I want you to keep changing between clubs and spades, clubs and spades, clubs and spades until I call stop. And when I call stop, you're gonna stop on whichever one you're at, okay?
All right, I'm ready. Go ahead and let me know when to stop.
So now at any point, it'll go and then they'll call stop. Now think about this. One more second and this could have been different, right? Everything's completely random. For example, if we went one more second and you changed your mind one more time, what would you be at?
Spades.
Spades. And that's a fantastic decision. That could have been anything, literally so random. In these spade cards, imagine holding them in front of you and imagine splitting them into the numbers and the pictures, and imagine you hand me one of them. Which one do you hand me, the numbers or the pictures?
Let's go with the numbers.
So you hand me the numbers. So now imagine spreading those picture cards in front of you that you're holding on to. We have the jack, the queen, the king. We need to narrow it down a bit, so can you name one for me?
Let's go with the queen.
Perfect, then name another.
Let's go with the jack.
So now we have the queen and the jack. I want you to imagine you set one of those down on the table. Which one do you set down?
I'll set down the jack.
And just like that, you guys made every single decision. You said black, you said spades, and ultimately you chose the jack. Now you've had one playing card written down. We were attempting to see if you could intuit it. Go ahead, take a look at which card I wrote down. And of course, it says the jack of spades. So you're thinking of a name of this character. Now we're obviously somewhat in sync here, so imagine the name of this character for me. Right away I see this is like it's like a medium length name, maybe like 3 or 7 letters, somewhere in that range. You don't have to tell me, you don't have to give anything away. But yeah, I think I'm gonna go with this. Okay, I'm gonna lock this in. I'm gonna lock this in and I'm gonna set this in your hand. Open up your hand, I'm gonna set that in your hand. So that's in spectator number 2's hand. I've committed to the name, I've locked it in. I cannot change my mind. So for the first time, why don't you tell us what that name was you had in mind? They say Fred. That's crazy, Fred. Okay, we're gonna get to that in a moment. I just wanna get yours first. Now you're thinking of a trait, right? This is interesting. It could have been any trait. Imagine how this person or this fictional character exhibits this trait. What they might say or do or how it might look. It's getting a little foggy for me. Can you actually take out the piece of paper that you wrote it on and just hold it in your hand and really feel that word? So now they'll take the billet out of their pocket, they'll really hold on to it, kind of feel it. Okay, it's starting to come through a little bit stronger. I'm gonna go with that. I'm gonna lock this in here. We'll trade now. So we trade billets. I'm gonna give you my prediction. I'm gonna lock that in. I've committed. There's no way I can go back. So think about this. Together, we just created a fictional character. I imagined its favorite playing card and you guys were able to intuit it. Now you've thought of its name, never wrote it down, just thought it in your mind. You've thought of a trait, you've never even said it out loud. It only exists in your mind. Now let me see that for a moment. Over here we have the trait. Over here we have the name. Now I want to start with you. You were thinking of the trait, correct? I'm not sure if I got this right, but I was able to pick up on something a bit more positive. You actually went with a personality trait rather than a physical trait. And I went for one thing here. I'll show you guys what I went for. This is what I went for. For the first time, what was it that you were thinking of? They'll say happy, and of course you can show that you correctly got happy. And finally, I'm gonna hand you this. I don't even want to touch it. You hand this to the last spectator. You went for a name of this character for the first time. What is that name that you had in mind? They will say Fred, and you can show that you have, of course, predicted Fred before any of this even started. All right, guys, so that is a studio performance, a very high-level overview of kind of how this routine would go down, how it would work. It is a very well-structured routine and a whole lot of fun to do. So let's go through a brief tutorial of this routine, and then we're going to talk about the structure and why it was structured the way it was, and some bonus ideas and that sort of thing. So I'm not really going to talk about the premise much here. I'm more so going to go from a methods perspective. So step one, we need to have them each think of a piece of information. Okay, whatever that piece of information is, you have spectator one think of a piece of information and spectator two, but you're going to do this in a very specific way. Spectator one thinks of the information first. You don't say each of you think of this. You say spectator one, I want you to think of this piece of information first, and you instantly hand them a billet and have them write it down. Now, a lot of the times, if you're familiar with my billet work video, and I'll link that up above because it's a very important video, but a lot of my philosophies on billet work is don't introduce the billets right away, right? Pause and have a logical justification for why eventually you need to have them write it down. Typically something like they're a visual learner, you need them to really connect with it. This case, it's different. Because we want a streamline walk around routine, you want to give them that billet to write onto right away. So instead of saying, think of something and then write it down, say, here, I'm going to hand you this and I want you to write down a personality trait on this, okay? And then later you'll call back to thinking of it. How it should look is spectator number one, I want to hand you this little piece of paper and a pen, and I'd like you to write down a personality trait of this character, whatever your plot happens to be. What that's going to do is now there's no justification needed. They're just gonna write it down because you didn't say think of it and then write it down. You just said write it down. So that's the first very important thing. Now, once they've written it down, and the very important reason why we do this in stages is because this first billet, we're gonna do a switch. Now, the switch makes a lot of logical sense if you do it in this way. We're gonna use the double lift switch. There's several different ways that different performers like to do this. Some like to do it behind the back. I'm not a fan of doing things behind the back, so I like the turn away method. So what I say is I get my billets and I get a break under one billet. So I get a break, and now I turn my head and I say, look, I'm gonna look away. I'll even cover my eyes like that. And I say, just set the billet on top of the stack so it's facing you. Now they will do that, and I still have my break, so now I have my break under two, and I say, okay, can you read that? If they confirm, then I know it's facing away. Then I show the other spectators, and that's the justification. I say, okay, now I just wanna make sure you all see that, so you guys all have that trait in mind. Again, head is away the whole time. Then I come back, and I'm just gonna grab my break, turn over, and now I've switched it, because it's a double, right? So I've switched it out. Now again, with my head turned, I push off that single card, I come over the top and I fold it the long way, and then I fold it the short way. Now, I wouldn't recommend pre-folding billets for this because I find it can get a little bit clunky with all the seams, but if you're finding it very hard to do a one-handed billet fold without looking, then go ahead and pre-fold it, but you'll find it's very easy to do. Have a break, you turn your head, they set it on top, you show everyone else, okay? Come, grab, do this all with your head turned, and you kind of want to do this across the body like this. You don't want to do it out in front. If you're right-handed like me, the cards will be in your left hand, and you're going to extend the left hand across the body, and then you're going to look to the left. So you're looking away, and the audience is over here. Now you're going to turn the double over, push off, and quickly fold, making sure not to flash this side because there won't be anything on that billet. So you just push off and you fold down right away, fold it over, then you come back and you hand it to them. They should still have the pen, and you tell them to initial it and put it in their pocket, right? This is now a blank billet with their initials on it, okay? That goes into their pocket. This has allowed us to do a couple of things. One of them being allowing this extremely clean next phase, which is you're gonna now grab another billet. Now be careful, do not hand them the top billet because that is the billet with your peak information that you need to get on it. So I would just grab the bottom billet and hand that to them, okay? So you just peel a billet off on the bottom and you say, here, spectator number two, write down another piece of information. So they will write down another piece of information. You can now have them fold it up themselves and autograph it, right? And that is the brilliance here. By them doing that, we can call back to how clean it was with them. which will inevitably make the first spectator feel like it was that clean for them as well, and it's really going to strengthen the routine. So they literally just do that and they put it in their pocket. It's as clean as can be. One of the reasons this is so good is if you have that heckler type, well, you let him be this person who just writes it down, puts it in their pocket, it's as clean as can be. You can even turn around, you can go into another room, because we're going to use the one ahead to gain this piece of information. Now, technically, they don't have to write this down, but you have them do it because it strengthens the first phase, because now they think they've each done the same thing. When you recap and call back, you just call back to this occurrence of it, and it will make that person feel like theirs was just as clean when you actually have their billet stolen behind on top of the deck. For this particular routine, you want to find a logical reason to introduce the idea of playing cards. For any old routine, if you're just doing like a, think of a name and think of an animal and you reveal it, then this can just be simply a test. This is sort of the first phase, if you really think about it. There's sort of the first sort of initial setup where they're signing the billets and writing things down, but the first moment of magic happens now. And so in the premise that I'm going to teach you, I've kind of built in a logical justification for the premise, but if you don't have that, it's very simple. All you need to say, now in order for this sort of mind reading thing to work, we really have to be in sync. So I like to do a little bit of an exercise to see how in sync we are. So I'm going to write down a playing card, or you can say my favorite playing card or whatever, and I'm going to see if you guys can try to intuit on what that card is, and that'll give me a sense if you guys are going to be good for this if we're in sync. And by saying we're going to see if you guys are good for this, it kind of makes it feel like, well, if you're not, then I'm not going to be able to read your mind. And that further strengthens the idea of them having written down on the billets, because you're saying you might not even be able to read their mind. So maybe that was kind of all for nothing in a way, right? If you kind of understand where I'm attacking that from. You pick up the top billet from the stack, and what would you know? It has your peak word written on it. Now this is optional. You could shuffle that billet to the bottom, then perform a peek or do any kind of other peek, but I think this is the best way to do it because, again, there's no heat on you, no thought. And this is one of the foolproofing ideas that is in this particular walk-around routine. If someone doesn't have the best handwriting, if you follow this method where you just pick up the top billet and you go to write your playing card on it, well, now you have all the time in the world to try to study that handwriting and figure out what it is. And ultimately, if you can't figure out what it is, then I'll explain in the other ideas how you could eventually kind of get out of that and how you could save it. But what you're going to do is you're going to get your peek, you're going to commit it to memory. Once it's memorized, you're going to pretend to write something down. So what I do is I just start scribbling over it as I'm pretending to write down the first playing card. Then I have a look at them and I say, no, you know what? I think I'm going to go with this. And then I just scribble out the word that they wrote down. I just cross it out so it's not legible anymore. Then underneath that, I write the playing card I want to force. This playing card could be any of the 12 picture cards in order for the equivocate process to work. I've talked about this a bunch of times in several different videos. Again, in the cards previously, I linked the full tutorial where you can learn the detailed breakdown of this equivocate. I'm going to go over it very, very quickly here, but it is so perfect, so strong, and absolutely cannot be backtracked if you do it right. It's just about getting the script down so that you can instantly follow up no matter what answer they give you to have them land on the playing card of choice. So let's say I want to force Jack of Spades. I write that down, I fold it up, and I set it in one of their hands. Now I say, I want to see if you guys can try to intuit this. And I love this because it's like a spectator mind reading plot. So it's it's more unique than just revealing information all the time, right? Here's the equivocate process. You say, imagine I have an invisible deck of cards. There's red cards and black cards. I dump one of the colors out. Which color do I dump out? I'm forcing Jack of Spades here. So if they say black, I say perfect. I dump out the black cards. I spread them in front of you and I hand them to you. Done. If they say red, you say, okay, I dump out the red cards and then just mime throwing them away. Don't say we'll get rid of them. Just mime throwing them away and say, here, I'm going to hand you that box of black cards, dump them out and spread them in your hands. Either way, you end up at the same position. For the suit, you have them repeat the suits in their mind, the two suits. So in this case, it'll be clubs and spades. You say, keep repeating it in your mind, keep saying it over and over and over, like, club, spades, club, spades, club, spades. And then you look at someone else or, the other spectator, or you can do it yourself. And you say, at some point, I'm gonna call stop, or they're gonna call stop. And whenever they do, stop on whatever you're at in your mind, but don't say it out loud. Okay? So you'll go through, they call stop, and now they'll stop. Now you don't know which one they're on, but you use this really clever line. You say, now that was completely random. One more second and it would have been completely different. Like, for example, if we went one more second and you changed your mind one more time, what would you be at? Now if they say spades, I say perfect, spades. And that's completely random, that's a great choice, and I move right into the next thing. I don't ask them, oh, you wanna go with spades? I just move in. If they say clubs, you follow it up with, but we didn't. right? You called stop or I called stop on that very exact moment when you were on spades in your head, and that's an incredible choice, right? This line is so nice because you've kind of set it up as an example. So think about how the out sounds if they say clubs. I say, and that was completely random, right? It's really interesting how that works, right? You call stop at any moment, right? Any moment in time and this would have been different, right? Like one more second, like for example, if we went one more second and you changed your mind one more time, what would you be at? Clubs, but we didn't, right? I called stop at that very moment when you were just thinking of spades, right? It's so interesting how that works. So you're on spades in your head, so let's go with that, right? It's very simple. That's one way I've been liking to do it recently. Now that you've forced the suit, you say, okay, imagine those spade cards in front of you and separate them into the numbers in the pictures. You hand me one. Which one do you hand me? If they say pictures, you say, great, I spread those picture cards in front of you. If they say numbers, you say, okay, great, spread those picture cards in front of you, right? That's why it's so important to have them actually hold the cards in this particular phase. So say, spread the cards in front of you, imagine splitting them into the numbers and the pictures, which one do you hand me? So if they hand you the numbers, you say, okay, great, now spread those pictures in front of you. If they do that, you say, okay, we got Jack, Queen, King, we need to narrow it down a little bit, so name one. If they say Jack, done. If they say Queen or King, then I immediately follow up. I usually like to point at someone else, but if it's the same spectator, you can do it on them. And then you say, name another. So name one, Queen, perfect. And you name one, King, okay, great. So if it's Queen and King, the two you don't want to force, then you say, and that leaves us with, because at the beginning you said we need to narrow it down. So narrow it down would imply getting rid of them, right? So you say we need to narrow it down a little bit. Can you name one, Queen? And can you name one, King? Perfect. And that leaves us with, and they'll say the Jack. You say Jack, fantastic. If they say Queen and Jack or King and Jack, so Jack is included in the two they name, then you just pretend like those were their choices, right? So they say King, and can you name one as well? Jack, perfect, the King and the Jack. Now hold that King and Jack in your hands and set one down on the table for me. If they say Jack, perfect, the Jack, that's a free choice, right? If they say King, you say perfect. So you're left holding the, and let them say it. I always like to let them say it, and they'll say Jack, fantastic choice, okay? So that's how the equivocate works, right? Go watch the full video because I went through it very fast in this video, but trust me, this always flies. It is so strong, so powerful if you get the scripting right. And the reason this is such a good opener is it's all in your control. We are gonna go straight into the reading. You're gonna look at the person who you do not know their information. So the second spectator who did the very clean, write something down, sign it, fold it, put it in their pocket. You look at them and you say, all right, I think we're in sync after that. So I'm gonna start with you. You pick up a billet, and now at this point, begin to do a bit of cold reading on them. You don't know what it is, but you'll know at least the category. You can kind of do some warm reading. So for names, or really anything, I use this. Now you say, look, you don't have to give away anything, so you can just keep a straight face. You don't have to say anything. But I'm feeling this is like a medium length name, like 3 to 7 letters, somewhere in that range. Just throw it out there, right? It doesn't matter. You want them to feel like you're trying to pick up on something. I think this might be a male name, but I'm not positive. Just focus on free. Okay, yeah, now it's kind of coming through. Now I'm gonna write down what I just peeked, which was the word happy. Now when you're writing down on a one ahead, break up the writing. Don't do it all at once because it'll be easy to see if it's a short word or a long word. Especially if you get a really short or really long word, break it up. So you look, you go like this. Maybe you fake write a few times if it's a short word. I say, okay, focus. So now I've written down a few letters, then I write a few more. Yes, okay, I'm gonna go with that. Yes, I'm gonna lock that in. Now I fold this up, and here's what I do. I just set it in their hand. I say, here, close that in your fist, hold it tight for me. I've locked in my prediction, I've committed to it. There's no way I can change my mind. For the first time, what is it you're thinking of? Now make sure you don't forget that line. Don't go to the next person and be like, oh yeah, what was it you were thinking of? You need to remember that line. That's one of the most important things. Right after you hand it to them, emphasize that you've committed, you've locked it in, you cannot change, it's in their hand, and you say for the first time, what's that name you're just thinking of? Now they will tell you the name, so they'll say Fred in this case, or whatever it happens to be. Act like you just predicted it correct. Don't just say, oh, okay, Fred, and then go on to the next person. If you actually got it right, you'd be a little bit happy, you'd be kind of giggly, smiley. So this is how I play it. For the first time, what's that name that you just went for? Fred? Are you serious? Okay, we'll get back to that in a moment, right? A little bit of acting goes a long way here with the one ahead. So I've acted that out a little bit. Now I come back to person number one. I say, okay, I'm gonna try with you, try to see what I'm picking up on. Now here, the brilliant thing is, you know exactly what the word is, so you can actually perform some hot reading. And hot reading is basically getting hits about the thing. So happy, I'm gonna say, things like, well, right away I can tell you went for Yeah, you went for a personality trait. I can see that. So don't give it all away, but give a little pieces away. You can actually go fairly far with this. I wouldn't go quite all the way, but like 80, 90%, because this is almost like your partial second phase here, where you're starting to get these seemingly real hits of mind reading, verbal reveals too. It's none of the writing down stuff, and it almost strengthens what you're doing with the writing, because it'll destroy the potential of you doing a one ahead or any switches, because now you're revealing things verbally. You know, I know their word's happy, so I'm gonna say something like, you know, you could have went for something physical or mental. I think you did go for a personality trait. You don't have to tell me anything, but I think it's a personality trait. And you're a positive person, so I think you might have went for something more positive. This is a shorter word. It's like 4, 5, 6 letters, somewhere in there. Yeah, okay. And now I'm just gonna write down the name that they just said. But I'm pretending everything in me is focused on this person. And the hot reading is so important because now it really feels like I'm writing down the word happy when in fact I wrote down Fred. Now, the other really important thing, if you remember, they have a billet in their pocket with their initials that has absolutely nothing on it because we switched it out. So we need to get that billet back to clean up. Very simple. As you're going through, I would save a few hot reading lines. So I would do this. Do one line of hot reading, so get one hit. So right away, I think this is like a personality trait. Then keep looking at them, say, okay, really imagine. Again, it's all about your process. I've talked about process up here, so important. Make them visualize this trait. Make them imagine that name spelt out in the air. You have to have something to make it feel like you're actually reading something, right? So yeah, imagine that trait for me. Imagine someone you know with that trait and how they make you feel. That's a great line. There's a very good line for you guys to use. And then once they do that, you say, okay, it's getting a little bit foggy. Can you actually take out that billet, hold it in your hand for me, just hold it in your fist, and really kind of feel the aura of that word. So that's a justification for them to take out the billet, seemingly to get the aura of the word they wrote down. So they'll now be doing this, it's in their hand. That's what you need. You need it back in their hand. Now you go through, you do another little bit of hot reading. Yeah, you're more of a positive person. I think this is a positive trait, maybe like 4 or 5 letters. I think I'm gonna go for this. Now I write down Fred. Again, everything in my being is making them feel like I'm writing down happy. I fold it up and I say, here, let's trade. I'm gonna lock in my prediction and you just hand me that. So you just trade billets. You say, look, we're just gonna trade. I'm gonna hand you my billet and this just goes straight into your pocket. Straight in your pocket and you're all cleaned up. Forget about it, they will never ask about it. Now, the last thing we need to do is the open switch so we can do the final 2 reveals. We just need to switch these billets places. Lots of different ways you can go about this. I think the most practical way and the best way to do it is with the open switch. So here's how it looks. I simply do a quick bit of recapping. Think about that. Look at the person who wrote something down very fairly and say, think about that. You guys just thought of a word, right? You don't even need to mention them writing it down. Just say this word only exists in your mind. Look at the person with the one ahead. Say you truly thought of anything. Then look at this person. Say you've never even said this out loud. And then gesture to spectator 1. The person who you've just done the trade with is the billet you want to get first. You look at them, you say, here, let me see that for a moment. And on here, I've attempted to predict your thought. And you point to it. Then you turn to person 2, and this billet just goes in your hand in kind of a finger palm position. You just kind of hold it behind your hand. It doesn't really have to even be in a perfect finger palm. You just hold it behind your hand. And you say, let me see this for a second, and you grab this one. You say, this one, I attempted to steal a thought from your mind. So I emphasize this billet, and then I just set it on top of the other billet in my hand. So now they're on top of each other, but they're behind my hand. And then I say one line, wouldn't it be so crazy if I were able to get that trait that you just thought of? And then I open up. And all I've done is the billet that went on top, I'm just picking it back up, but now I'm looking at this person. Because if you think of the sequence, I took this billet from spectator 1, put it behind my hand. Then I took the billet from spectator 2, it goes right on top. I pause, say a line as a bit of time misdirection, but I love saying the line of, now this is incredible, but it would be truly impressive if I was able to correctly predict that word that you were just thinking of. And as I emphasize predict that word you were thinking of, then I pull out the billet, the one that's right on top, which I got from them, but I'm doing, again, all the attention is on this person, making them feel like it's the same billet. So again, there's no real switch. I just put them behind my hand and then I take the one I want. So first one goes in my hand from spectator number 1. Second one from spectator 2 goes in my hand. Then I say my line and I take the one that's right on top, so I don't have to think about it. I just take the first one and I'm looking back at spectator 2. So I'm just going from here to here, back to here. Watch the performance, you can see how I kind of did it, but I'm back to here and I'm holding this one. Very important, open up the fingertips, don't keep this one hidden. Get it at the fingertips right away and then move your hand over towards this person. So you're feeling almost like you're handing it to them, but you're just kind of holding it here towards them. So all the emphasis is here. But this billet's still in view. You're not switching it, it's right in view, and it really will make it feel like, yes, this is yours and this is yours, even though you've switched them. You say, okay, for the first time, remember, you've never said this out loud. I went for something I think a little bit more positive. You know, if I got this right, we'll see. Let me know, what was that trait you were thinking of? They will say happy. You can unfold it with one hand or hand it to them to unfold and reveal that you got it right. Then with the second billet, instantly hand it to that second person. Say, here, I don't even want to touch it. You go ahead. What was it again for the first time that you were thinking of? They'll say the piece of information, and then they can open it up in their hands and show everyone this freely chosen name in the cleanest way possible that you have predicted. So that is the breakdown of the routine. That's all the mechanics, the sleights. Again, I've linked other important tutorials that to kind of take some of these things to the next level if you're struggling with any of them, because I did go over a lot of that quickly. Now let's talk a little bit about the structure of the routine. So I think structure is very important when you're routining, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to create this series, to give you guys a better sense of structuring routines. You can do any pieces of information besides the playing card. I mean, you could replace that for any other force that you know. I just love the playing card one because it's propless basically, but it's surefire propless, and it's so much in your control, and that's a great place to start. You know, I will say we do have this sort of intriguing sequence to start with them each writing on a billet and placing them in their pockets, and I like that because it gets a couple people involved right off the bat, and it kind of sets you up for what the ending's going to be. They know that by the end of it, you're going to try to read their minds on, you know, what's in their pocket, which I think is pretty awesome. It also gets you set up to steal that first piece of information right away, so you know you're comfortable. You haven't even done an effect yet, and you already have a piece of information sitting on top of the deck ready for you to peek at any time. So it gives you a real sense of comfort before you've even moved into your first effect. So now that you move into that first playing card force, the reason I love it is extremely hands-off, very powerful, it is relatively quick, and it is all in your control. That is one of the only effects where the spectator literally has no control. You have full control of whatever they say. You have an out, you have full control to guide them to that card. If you do it right, it is a fantastic surefire opener, one of my favorite things to do. Now the second phase is great because the second phase kind of happens a little bit before the first phase. You're kind of off to the races by the time it comes to the actual second phase, and most of what you've done originally kind of gets forgotten, frankly. So I would consider the reveal part of the second phase as basically the moment when you're warm reading the spectator, right? Because you've done all the work, you've got the peak. So the moment when you're doing some of the reveals in the warm reading is what I really consider that second phase, because it's really important to have some verbal reveals so that they don't feel like there's anything fishy going on with the pieces of paper or the billets. Well, you're actually just looking at someone and just telling them what they're thinking of. That's what it is. You get your peak in the first phase, and that's one of the reasons these work so well together. You have like the first little mini setup phase, which gets you the information for phase 2. Then you do phase 1, which gets you the peak for phase 2. Then you kind of set up for phase 3 by going into the one ahead, you know, writing down what you just peaked, beginning the one ahead process, getting the one ahead word, having them say it out loud. Then you transition to the second spectator, and this is really when you get into phase 2, when you've already basically completed the setup for phase 3, because you've just already done the one ahead. So it's all so well intermingled where you're setting up the second routine in the first routine, and then you set up for the third routine in the second routine. And so by the time you get to the reveal, it just feels like pure mind reading and pure reveals. So now I jump to that first spectator and I go through some warm reading reveals. So I think it's really important. Take your time here. Feel free to get really close to revealing that word, almost to the point where they kind of know that you know what the word is, because this is where you're really strengthening the one ahead, because you're making it feel like you're picking up on the actual word you're about to write down, and 2, you're adding credibility that you can actually pick up on what their thoughts are, and it's not just something with the writing and the sneaky, and it really kills the one ahead method. So that's kind of what I consider the second phase. The second phase is a little bit spread out because you have the setup, then you have the peak, then you have the warm reading, which is what I really consider it. But then still, in a moment, which you might still consider the second phase, we're gonna reveal that piece of information finally, and that happens first before the final reveal, which is what I consider the third phase. So that second phase is really stretched out, and I think the second phase is all about establishing credibility and cleaning up all the other methods. Now the third phase is the perfect closer because everything is so clean about it. Writing down and them thinking of that word is 100% a free choice. It's 100% surefire because it's literally a one ahead. They're gonna tell you it out loud, right? So there's no risk, and it's so strong when you can reveal that you have predicted something that was so freely thought of, right? And by that time, you've put in so much time that they don't even remember really that they had written it down in the first place. And the great thing is with that spectator, you just leave that billet in their pocket because it's so clean, it's signed, it's almost sort of can be like a souvenir. They can just hold on to it, and it's just gonna instill that the other billet that isn't clean that you've taken and put in your pocket was the exact same thing. So it really strengthens the routine. You can see how everything's really well thought out and buttoned up for this routine, which is why it's so good for walk around. Just revealing that third piece of information as that final ending piece is just so strong. It's the strongest reveal you can do. And it can just really, blow the roof off. So now let's talk a little bit about plot points and transitions. So I think the perfect plot is something where you can, like the methods, weave all of these together. So I think something like the character plot is really good, where you have everyone work together to create a fictional character. Person 1 thinks of a trait, person 2 thinks of a name. Be careful with what you have person 1 and 2 think of. I would always have person 2 think of the more impressive thing. So you might have person 1 think of an animal and person 2 think of any object that's a bit more impressive. Because that's your final reveal, you want it to climax and be the strongest thing. So I think thinking of a character trait for this imaginary person that we're creating, and then thinking of a name, the name's a little bit stronger in my opinion, so I have them do the name. The reason I like the character trait one so much is because then you can say, and I'm gonna pick the hobby of this person. Now I'm a magician, I love playing cards, so I'm gonna say they like playing cards too, and in fact they have a favorite playing card. I have a card in mind, I'm actually gonna say that's their favorite playing card, and now you go right into the playing card equivocate force. I'm gonna write it down, see if you guys can intuit it. Like you saw in the performance, I just think it's so strong, and it just ties everything together so well. Everything's justified, you have a unique plot, a unique premise. But with that said, you can really take this in all the different ways that you want. It can be absolutely anything, they don't have to be related, and you can just bring up the playing card thing as just a test, right? Just to see if you guys are in sync. I'm gonna write down my favorite playing card and let's see if you guys can intuit it. You don't have to do that particular plot, but I think if you can think of a plot that ties everything together, I really like it, and something that can justify the playing card. And it also makes a lot of sense because once they intuit the playing card and you guys are in sync, well then you go right into the reading and you do some reveals. So it all logically makes sense. Now let's talk about the pros and the cons of this routine. The pros are, it is surefire. Every moment is surefire, perfect, and very, very strong, right? This routine is killer. You're revealing 2 pieces of freely chosen information, which is incredible. Plus, you're having a spectator mind reading routine. So absolutely killer. It involves so many spectators. If you think about it, you can have spectator 1 think of this, spectator 2 think of that. You can have spectator 3 hold the billet for the playing card, spectator 4 choose the color, spectator 5 choose the suit, spectator 6 call stop for the suit, spectator 7 can choose the numbers of the picture, spectator 8 can choose to narrow it down to the picture. Spectator 9 can narrow it down further if you need to for the picture cards. So you can get like 9, 10, 11 spectators involved in one routine, which is just perfect for table hopping. You'll go to a table of 8 or 10 people, you can literally get every single person to do something in this routine. And that's what I'll do. I'll just go around the table through the different moments. I might have spectator 1 on my left and then spectator 2 on my right because they're the most important, and I'll just go around the rest of the table for the equivocate process. So it's absolutely great for that. It's very engaging, it's a good length. You can actually just, like I said, do this as a full routine because you can take your time with it and really stretch this out and probably get a good 7 minutes out of it if you need it, because it's a really engaging plot and there's several great moments. You can really stretch this out probably even over 10 minutes if you really needed to, with all the different moments and some of the readings you could do from all of this. Obviously being very minimal with the props is fantastic for walk around and being able to carry around something that's surefire and so hard hitting. Instant reset is fantastic. You don't need to do anything. You just need to throw out the billets or get rid of all these billets that you've written on. But if you think about it, at the end, you're left with 1 billet in your pocket that you want to keep to yourself because that's kind of the evidence, the dirty billet. Then you have this playing card billet, which they could keep as long as you've done a good job scribbling out what they wrote. If they really looked carefully and they could make out, you know, the word, that might not be the best thing. So I might not let them keep this one. I might get rid of that. But then the other billets, you have the 2 billets that you wrote on, right, for your one ahead, and then you have the billet in their pocket. So you can hand out the billets for the one ahead as souvenirs. The one in their pocket they can keep as a souvenir as well. So you got like 3 souvenirs to hand out too, which is awesome. Maybe even 4 if you do a good job of scribbling out that 1 billet. And then it's just a very organic routine, right? No props, really. It doesn't feel like props are really involved. It's organic, just pure mind reading, so to speak. The only negative I can really think of with this particular routine, because this is a pros and cons list, but the cons really, it's tough to think about. For me, the only cons that really come to mind are the fact that you use 5 billets for the routine. I mean, it's a very small expense. I would just get very cheap billets. That's what I use. I mean, it is a lot of billets for one routine. If you're doing 10 tables, it's 50 billets in a night, right? But again, it's pieces of paper. Like, it's not the end of the world. So that would be the only thing. And then obviously, like, with all those billets, you have to, you know, figure out what to do with them. But that's why I think giving them away as souvenirs is great. Also, I think that maybe, you know, having potential to expand on the final reveal in terms of how you reveal it. So not just, I wrote something down, turn around, which you're kind of stuck with the one ahead. Whereas if you do a peek, you could reveal it using all kinds of different reveals, reveal it in any way you want. So that's maybe the only other thing that could be desired in a routine like this. All right, let's quickly talk about my tips and tricks for this effect. We've gone so long in this video, it's so jam-packed. I'm already at over an hour of filming. This is gonna be a nightmare to edit. Process. So make sure at each step along the way, you introduce your process. You have things that they can latch onto that they think is the method. Again, I've linked my process video earlier on in the cards, but it's all about having them visualize and imagine, you know, that animal running by them and what it would look like, and imagine that object here in front of you. All these things, very important. That's what they're gonna latch onto as the method. You need to do that kind of stuff to make this work properly. Also, cold reading. Adding your cold reading in the one ahead is so important. I'm not gonna dive too much into cold reading. I gave you one nice cold reading line for letter length that you can use, where you just say this is like a medium length word, maybe 3 to 7 letters, somewhere in that range. It's now gonna feel like you're picking up on what's in their head, and after then, when you go to write down on that billet, they're positive that you're writing down what is in their mind because of the cold reading, even if you have no idea what it is. Another idea that I like is if you're someone who does carry playing cards, I think one option you could do is peek the billet in another way, not as a, you know, pick up and scribble out as you're writing something else on the billet. If you just casually kind of just peek it, again, you could just literally look at it because they have no idea that it's in this stack. But if you have a deck of cards on you, you can just force on them the playing card that you guys want to use, and it doesn't even have to be a force. I used to do this. I would cut it and I'd hold a break above it so it'd be on top of the deck, and I'd just slip cut it into the middle, and then I would just start dealing, and I'd say, okay, we just need a card for this, we'll just pick a random one, we'll use this one. And I'd basically just classic force myself as I'm just seemingly randomly throwing the cards down. I say, okay, we'll go with this one. Let's see if you guys can intuit what that card is. You have to be careful with the premise. I think on one side it's strengthened if they think you haven't seen the card, but on the other side, then it doesn't really make sense as you guys being in sync because they're no longer reading you. So you'd have to change the plot to more of a, okay, let's see if you guys have a good intuition kind of thing. And then if they do, you can kind of transition that to say, well, you guys have a good intuition, so I think this might work. I might be able to get into your mind. People who have good intuitions, this usually works well with, right? I just have always found when you're doing the equivocate, if they don't think you know what the card is, it's always really strong that way. So that's just a little small idea. I probably wouldn't do it because I think the routine's perfect as is, but just a nice idea if you're someone who carries cards. Really dig in with those warm reading reveals when you're doing that second phase warm reading. I've mentioned this already, but I just want to say, dig into the warm reveals, take it all the way almost to revealing the word, and that'll really, you know, let them know that you're picking up on and you're reading them, and all the other reasons I've mentioned about killing the methods and that sort of thing. Make sure you really recap properly, take your time. At every stage when you're about to reveal the playing card, say, look, think about it, you guys made every single decision. You chose completely randomly a card, and let's see if you were able to intuit that card, right? Then when it comes to the one ahead, just before you reveal that billet, and while you're kind of doing the open switch, what you're talking about, you want to say, like, you just thought of a word, you never said it out loud. Don't say you never wrote it down, because they did in this case. You never said it out loud, it only exists in your mind. I committed to something before you said anything. How crazy would that be if I was able to pick up on those thoughts exactly in your head? Really hype up that reveal. The more you hype it up and are excited for it, the more they will be. So how crazy would that be if I was able to get inside your mind and steal that thought out of your head? That would be pretty insane. I don't know, let's take a look. Right? Things like that really draw out that reaction from them. But your recapping is so important. You need to establish that before the reveal. I've talked all about recapping in my recent How to Make Your Magic Better video, probably the best video from that series. You have to go watch that. You'll get so much better reactions with those tips. One idea is like add little things in. So at the moment when you've already written down the first one ahead word, when you're doing these warm readings and trying to pick up on it and you have them take out the billet and squeeze it in your hand, you could do something like stigmata, if you know what that is, where you have a letter appear on the back of your hand, or other kind of little things you can throw in before you commit to writing it down as like different reading techniques. I think stigmata is a great one, so they can hold your hand. Again, if you need to draw out the routine more, they can hold your hand, and then all of a sudden the first letter of the word they're thinking of will start to appear on your hand, right? That's incredible. And then it's like, okay, great, now I think it's really coming to me. Then you finish writing it down and you go into the one ahead. The last thing I want to talk about, the real tips and tricks, is just on saving the different elements. So with the equivoque, there's nothing to save, just hit it. It's surefire, it's all in your control. With the other ones, there's nothing that could really go wrong besides a couple of little things which aren't so much your fault generally. With the peak, the big thing is you not being able to read the handwriting. That's possible. What I would first do is try to identify a letter that you can read and try to figure out what the word is. If you can't, then just store that letter. If you can get the first or last letter, that's an easy letter to store and use for later. When you get your peak, right, we haven't done the playing card thing yet. So you get your peak and you look at it and you say, I have no idea what this says. I can't read any letters, right? Let's say you can't read a single letter. It's just a complete scribble. What you're gonna do, same thing, you cross it out and you say, you know what, I'm gonna intuit, I'm gonna write down a playing card, okay? And now, think about it, you've just said you're gonna write down a playing card, but this is what you're gonna do. You're gonna say, hold on, it just hit me. You're thinking of that name, right? Yeah, it just came through so clearly. Okay, forget the playing card, I'm gonna write down this instead. Now, you actually write down the playing card, but you pretend to write down the name and you say, okay, I've locked it in, I'm gonna hand you that for the first time. What's the name you're thinking of? Boom, I've locked it in. All the one ahead tips I talked about, act surprised. They'll say the name. Now you come over here and you say, okay, now I was talking about that playing card earlier. Let me write down that playing card. Boom, and now you just write down the name. You say, I want to see if you guys can intuit it. So you set this billet down with the name in someone's hand, go through the equivoque process, and you force the playing card that you just wrote on this billet over here. Hopefully you see where we're going. At the end, you get to the playing card. They've just named the Jack of Spades. You grab both billets, do the open switch. Think about how crazy that is. I wrote down a playing card and you were able to intuit the Jack of Spades. And here, I'll let you open that. What was that name you had in mind? Boom. That's why this routine is just really so great. Like, out of everything I've said, this might be the reason, because of all the safety nets built in, right? You can easily just alter the one ahead slightly if you can't read the peak and save that. The other thing you can do is if you have a letter, if you can make out at least one letter, then just do a one ahead with the letter. It's the same process. You do the playing card thing, then you come over here. On this billet, you just write the letter, hand it to spectator 2. They tell you the name, you come over here, you write down the name. But as you're reading spectator 1, you say, you know what, you're just so hard to read. You're really trying, going through your process. I'm only getting one letter from you. Can you maybe think of the first letter for me? Yeah. I don't even know. I'm just gonna go with the first letter because you're really tough to read. Now you just write down the first letter. Yes, the second phase isn't gonna hit as hard, but you still get the third phase with the one ahead, right? Then you just have the letter and the name, you switch them. Now the letter's here, the name's here, and you go into it and you reveal it. So a lot of great ideas here, and I think that's one of the things I love about this so much is it's just so surefire. There's always a way to save it. If you want to learn the perfect follow-up effect for this routine, go check out this absolutely killer mentalism effect that I've taught right here on the channel. All right, guys, that is it for me on Repertoire episode 2. Let me know what you thought about this episode. Is this a routine that you would perform? Now, I would love to know in the comments if you have any feedback, any ways that you think I can improve the Repertoire series. As I said, this is episode 2, brand new episode, so if you have any feedback, please leave it down in the comments below. And finally, let me know what you'd like to see for episode 3 of Repertoire and future episodes. If you have some ideas for different routines you'd like me to create for different scenarios, different types of magic, leave them down in the comments below. If you guys would like to check out a private lesson or join my exclusive channel membership, link is down in the description. And with all that said, don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.